Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being with us. Looks like we'll have a small, intimate group here for this presentation. Coming up with a list of topics in swimming, things that are new, was relatively easy because there are not a huge number of them at this point in time. First, we have the mixed relays. The history of the mixed relays is that they were tried for the first time internationally at a Pan-Pacific Championship back in 2007, and then were introduced formally in 2010 in Singapore in the Junior Olympic Championship. We had a meeting in January or February of this year with the Coaches Commission where we discussed the mixed relays. And in case anyone doesn't know, when I say mixed relays, we're talking about 2 men and 2 women in a relay. And there was mixed feeling. Some of the traditionalists felt that the tradition of competitive swimming and what relays were, and others felt that it was a fun kind of innovative introduction to our sport. So it was agreed that we would do a little more experimentation with the World Cup series this year. As most of you know, the World Cup is 8 competitions in 3 different pods around the world, and we did have mixed relays at those events. I think the jury is still out on the topic of the mixed relays, whether we want to proceed with them, whether they should be short course or long course. You have some logistical difficulties in that we only have the overhead cameras at the start end of the pool. And as you know, even though the overheads are for time, for backup time, we do use them to verify any negative exchanges in relays. So again, you want the exchanges to take place at that end of the pool if you're going to introduce some new relays. So the next step is that in Istanbul, when the Coaches Commission is together, the Coaches Commission and representatives of the Technical Swimming Committee will get together again and talk more about it and discuss if there is a possibility of recommending to the Bureau that the mixed relays long course be introduced even for the Barcelona Championship. So that's all kind of up in the air, and as I say, some recommendations will be made to the Bureau in Istanbul, and that information will be published to all of you in the national federations as quickly as possible if in fact those relays are going to be introduced for the Barcelona Championship. Backstroke starts. As you all know, there have been many innovations with the starting blocks as far as the non-slip surface, and most recently in 2008 for Beijing, the introduction of the fin on the back of the block, which allows athletes to do the track kind of start. So while all of these things have happened to benefit swimmers who start from the starting block, nothing much has happened over the years for the backstrokers. And Aaron Pearsall from the United States, when he went on to the Athletes Commission, took it as an opportunity to start lobbying for backstrokers and what could be done to help them. As you know, oftentimes the pads can be a little slippery and the backstrokers are trying to get a firm grip, and it's kind of an unnatural movement anyway to go back into the water as opposed to diving in from the forward start. So Omega took his comments to heart and began some experimentation, and they developed a couple of prototypes which they enlisted the help of the United States Olympic Committee in Colorado Springs to do some testing of those prototypes, and they're fairly close now, I think, to a finished product. This is a drawing basically of what it's going to look like. The yellow that you see resting on the block is a fabric type of material. The blue is a small platform that will be slightly elevated, that will be similar to the top of the starting blocks so that it is non-slip, and that's where the backstrokers can place their feet for the start. Now, after the start, it's going to become the responsibility of the official in that lane to remove that starting device so that it's out of the way for both flip turns for the athlete and for their finishes, and out of the way of the timing system. So it's going to be another little job for officials at the start end of the pool, but hopefully will be an assist to the backstrokers. And Omega told me yesterday that they are hopeful of being ready by the end of the year to distribute these to national federations so that people can start trying them out and understand how they work and what the nuances are, so that hopefully in Barcelona we will be able to use them. I think everyone knows that since Beijing, we've passed legislation that says anything new has to be available for people to try prior to being introduced into a major competition. And so hopefully Omega will have this available by the end of the year. I know that Peter Hertzler from Omega is doing a presentation in one of the other sessions, so he may be able to tell you a little bit more about it than I can. I'm getting all of it secondhand. Next comes the fun one to talk about. How many folks in this room are swimming people, pool swimming people? If it, give me a clue. Okay, because how much detail I go into talking about possible breaststroke changes it depends on how many folks really have that interest. I know that we have a mixed group in here. Everyone is aware that we have a problem with the breaststroke currently, in that the underwater track camera from television and the overhead camera, excuse me, Peter, for picking on television, now are able to show folks viewing at home things that we cannot see on the deck as officials. And we know that there is a great difficulty in being an official at the start end of the pool, and when the swimmers dive in, there's a lot of splash and there's a lot of water turbulence. You also have the very bright lights required for television and some certain amount of glare on the water, and it is very difficult to see initially what is happening. After seeing multiple kicks, multiple dolphin kicks in the breaststroke in Athens in the Olympic Games, the next Congress made the decision to change the rules to allow a single dolphin kick followed by a breaststroke kick at the start and the turn of the breaststroke. What we're seeing now is, rather than a single dolphin kick followed by a breaststroke kick, we have 1, 2, sometimes 3 dolphin kicks. And so there's a great deal of controversy at this point in time as far as how we should handle it. Do we want to change the rules to allow more than 1 dolphin kick? Do we want to utilize underwater video to identify the multiple kicks? There are a lot of possibilities. I will mention just 2 of the rule suggestions that I've received so far. Since in every other stroke you've got to surface at 15 meters, it's been suggested, why not require in the breaststroke that you surface at 15 meters, and what you've done up until you surface at 15 meters we're not too concerned about. But again, the surface at 15 meters and judge the breaststroke from that point. Several other suggestions have been made as far as when a kick could be allowed, be it when the hands have separated, when it's during the stroke, or even before the start of the second stroke. All of that will be worked through by the technical committee in Istanbul in December, and we will be making recommendations to the FINA Bureau, The Bureau then will make its recommendations, and the Congress in Barcelona will have the final say and the final decision on what to do with all of this. It's not the first time that something new in a stroke has created some difficulties and required changes to the rules. It's probably 20 years ago now that we saw some world-class backstrokers who swam the entire length of the pool underwater. And a decision was made that, number one, it's not very exciting or interesting to see someone swimming underwater. And number two, there were some safety concerns as far as young swimmers mimicking this. And so that's when the rule was passed that you had to surface at 15 meters. Within the next couple of years, the 15-meter surface requirement was added to the butterfly and the freestyle as well. So the other thing I'll mention only briefly, because Cornell did mention it in the presentation earlier, is the use of underwater video or that kind of technology. That's very controversial at this point in time, whether we want to introduce that aspect to the sport. That's all I'll say on that. If you have questions, we can deal with those later. We have heard the name Michael Phelps numerous times already in the last 2 days, but when we talk about change of the guard and what's new in swimming and what's coming, I think we can't move forward without acknowledging Michael, who has been such a factor in swimming over the last 12 years. You know, we talk always about the 22 Olympic medals, but it's also, I think, significant that he was the winner of 33 World Championship medals, 26 of those gold. So it will be a long time, if ever in my lifetime, before we see another athlete who rises to that level of performance. But we do have lots of newcomers coming along, and the sport will continue to be exciting as we watch their development. This is Sun Yang, who was the first Chinese male swimmer to win an Olympic medal. And I think that is significant to the sport because we have seen Chinese females on the podium over the years, but this is the first Chinese male swimmer to win a medal. And I assume we will be seeing many more as we move along. Yannick Yanel in France won the 200 free and swam the anchor leg in the French relay in the 4x100 relay to overtake Ryan Lochte and become a great hero. And I think we will be seeing a great deal more of him. This young lady at the age of 17 in her first Olympics won 4 golds and 1 bronze, and it's Missy Franklin, who I think we will be seeing quite a lot of in the coming years. I don't know if any of you have seen the video that the U.S. swimmers did when they were in training camp prior to the Olympics. It's been out on, you know, YouTube and Facebook and all those things that I don't follow. Have any of you seen it? Okay, it's quite interesting. It's done to the music of Here's My Number, Call Me Maybe, and Missy organized all of that, and Frank Bush, who spoke yesterday at the coaches clinic, said to me when he saw what the athletes were up to, he thought, we're going to be great in London. If these girls are so relaxed that they're organizing a fun video and kind of forcing the guys to take part in it, they certainly are not worried about what their performance in London is going to be. And so he went in feeling very confident. This young lady joins the ranks of the great Dutch sprinters. We all know Peter van den Hogenband and Inge de Bruin, who were great sprinters, Dutch sprinters, and this young lady joins their group, and I think we'll see a lot more of her in the future. She's one of the athletes who had back-to-back events in London, and that I wound up escorting to the diving well for some warm down so that she could compete in her relay. And I thought it was interesting that she made a stop along the way in the mixed zone of the media to say hello to Peter Vanden Hogenband, because they both have, it was the coach who coached Peter who is now coaching this young lady. Another young swimmer from Lithuania, an upset in the women's 100 breast, and one that I think we will see many times in the future. And there are, of course, 100 other photos that we could put up there and take a look at. We're not going to take the time to do that. I will tell you one other quick London story, because I think it says something significant about the athletes in the sport that we all love so. And that is, again, Michael Phelps. Michael, after the 200 butterfly, was going to be swimming in a relay, and the U.S. coaches came to me and said, came to Soren and Dale and myself and said, you know, how are we going to handle this? We're assuming he's going to be in the medal ceremony, and immediately after that medal ceremony and the long parade that they do is going to be a relay that he needs to be part of. And so we arranged that he would walk down the pool and over to the photographers and then right to the call room, as opposed to making the whole circle so that he could join his teammates. And I was waiting at the door for him to make sure that wasn't a problem. And as he was coming along with Chad, and the London newspapers the next day like to say, well, silver wasn't good enough, and showed pictures of Michael being very sad. Well, in fact, Michael had a smile on his face, and I saw him put his arm around Chad's shoulder and kind of point to the door where I was standing. Well, it turns out that Chad was also in a relay, and this was kind of a new experience for the South African swimmers, and so they had not thought to ask, well, how can he get to join his relay teammates rather than having to walk all the way around the pool? And he and Michael were talking, and he mentioned this to Michael. Michael said, oh, no problem, just come with me. They've arranged it. You can join your team right in here in the call room. And so I think just a great example of great sportsmanship and the kind of athletes that we all have had the opportunity to see and work with. And I was going to leave you with some questions, but I understand that's going to come at the end. So I'll give it back to Dennis.
Thank you, Carol.